Hi, welcome to Healing Hope, How to Tell Your Children When Mommy Has Cancer. I'm Stephanie Blaufarb. I'm the Ovarian Cancer Program Director, and I'm glad to see a few of you have already joined us, but we're going to give folks a minute or two more because it takes about a minute to sign in to the webinar. So we're just going to hold tight for another minute, and then I'll introduce our speaker. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started now. Welcome to Healing Hope, How to Tell Your Children When Mommy Has Cancer. I'm Stephanie Blaufarb, as I already said. So SHARE is a national nonprofit that improves the lives of women affected by breast or ovarian cancer through experienced peer support, accessible education, and innovative outreach, and always for free. SHARE meets women wherever they are, and especially in medically underserved communities, with the insight of women who have been there too, creating a nationwide network where women are empowered and feel less alone. SHARE's free services include support groups, educational tools, expert-led webinars and presentations, a national helpline, online communities, and survivor patient navigation. For more information, visit our website, sharecancersupport.org. So during the presentation today, all participants will be muted. When the presenter finishes speaking, we will open up for a question and answer session. You're welcome to submit questions during the presentation through the question panel on the control panel on your screen. When asking questions, remember the presenter is unable to give specific medical advice. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on the SHARE website soon. So our presenter today is Wendy Harpham. She is a doctor of internal medicine, a 28-year cancer survivor, and nationally recognized leader in survivorship. Her children were 1, 3, and 5 years old when she was diagnosed in 1990 with a type of cancer with no known cure. When ongoing illness forced Dr. Harpham to retire from patient care, she started writing and speaking to continue to educate, comfort, and inspire patients. She wrote a book set that has become a classic in the field of helping children when a parent has cancer, including When a Parent Has Cancer, A Guide to Caring for Your Children. It comes with the children's book, Becky and the Worry Cup. This book set received the Book of the Year award from the American Journal of Nursing. Additionally, Dr. Harpham co-authored with Laura Numeroff a children's book called The Hope Tree, Kids Talk About Breast Cancer. Her newest book is Healing Hope Through and Beyond Cancer. Further, Dr. Harpham writes a blog on healthy survivorship and an award-winning regular column in Oncology Times called View from the Other Side of the Stethoscope. Without further delay, I would like to welcome Dr. Harpham.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Danielle and Stephanie and everyone at SHARE for inviting me to talk about a topic very close to my heart. I have no disclosures and no liabilities, and my goals today are to provide an overview of the challenges of sharing a diagnosis with children, as well as to discuss ways to help your children find hope, and not just any hope, but healing hope, by which I mean hope that helps them deal with mommy's cancer in healthy ways. My hope is that by the end of the webinar, you feel more confident about finding the best path for your family, and you see why I believe the greatest gift we can give our children is not protection from the world, but the confidence and the tools to cope and grow. The information I'm presenting today can be found in Healing Hope and in the book set When a Parent Has Cancer, which comes with Becky and the Worry Cup. I do think it'll help if I share my story briefly. I know it's cliche, but it's true. Before my cancer diagnosis, I was one of those lucky people getting to live my dream. I was happily married. I had 3 healthy babies. Darn cute, don't you think? And I had a busy solo practice of internal medicine. Only a month after celebrating my 36th birthday, I was diagnosed with, as you heard, stage 3 indolent non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a common cancer, a slow-growing cancer with no known cure. My oncologist prescribed what my internists like to call commando chemo. It was very aggressive chemotherapy. And the months of treatment were rewarded with a CR, a complete remission. Less than a year later, I developed my first recurrence, and I was in and out of treatment for years. I'm sharing this outline of my medical history not for the details, although they are pretty interesting, but simply to illustrate the medical course that shaped my perspective on parenting through cancer. Treatments that included clinical trials, 3 trials far from home. I just added some information on the right side in red font, the ages of my children at each leg of my cancer journey. Since for so many years I didn't get well and I didn't die, my family was stuck dealing with the stress and challenges of raising children while mom has cancer. And the upside is that I had the luxury of time to find out what worked for my family and what didn't, and to learn from my many mistakes. For those of you who are wondering how I am now, I'm happy to share. Well, you heard, I just celebrated my 28th cancerversary, thanks to all those courses of treatments. I might point out the last 7 of which were not options when I was first diagnosed. Those 3 babies are now grown, and every day I enjoy my writing. My years of survivorship have convinced me there is no one right way to do cancer or to raise children when a parent has cancer. There are best ways for each patient, for each family, at each point in time, with best determined by a host of factors, some of which I've listed here. When mommy has cancer, the crux of the parenting challenge is this: how can you be a good parent when your own needs are so great? For me, the first 2 steps were accepting that my health crisis was my children's too, and deciding to use the frightening, unwanted illness positively whenever possible. Taking those first 2 steps caused something almost magical to happen. In certain ways, parenting became easier than it had ever been before. Now, not instantly. First, I had to learn how to live with my illness, and I had to learn how to help my children. Many parents feel reluctant to tell their children the diagnosis. They want to keep it a secret, and that's understandable. Instincts push parents to try to shield their children and preserve the sweet innocence of childhood. Many parents feel overwhelmed or out of control with a new diagnosis, feelings that make it easy to underestimate the impact of mommy's illness on their children. With any new diagnosis, a first cancer, a recurrence, a second cancer, a complication, with any diagnosis, parents' time and energy may be stretched to the limit, tempting them to see pushing off dealing with the children as an option, pushing it off until mom is healthy again. So let's address some of the obstacles to sharing the diagnosis with the children. The instinct to shield your children from your diagnosis is natural, strong, and unfortunately not adaptive. I liken it to the instinctive response if your clothes catch fire. Every muscle of your body screams, "Run!" But that action would fan the flames and increase the danger. The healthy response is to suppress your instinct to run and instead to stop, drop, and roll, just like we were taught in school. Well, similarly, after a cancer diagnosis, the healthy response is to repress the instinct, the desire to shield them, and instead to include them. Why? If your illness will cause any changes at home, your children will notice the changes on some level or another. And your children are always taking in what's happening in their world, whether you want them to or not. And even if your kids are too young to understand the idea of cancer, they still know something serious is up. And here's the thing. Your children will draw conclusions based on what they're experiencing and what they know. Parents who exclude their children are risking their children drawing inaccurate conclusions about what's happening and finding maladaptive, unhealthy ways of coping. Choosing to be open with your children gives you power. Power to guide your children toward realistic yet hopeful interpretations of the events, and power to guide them toward healthy ways to cope. An image that helped me was of using my unwanted illness as a platform for teaching life lessons I'd want to teach them if I'd never been sick. Cancer basically gave me a megaphone for sharing the messages that might help my kids grow stronger in certain ways, stronger than their friends who never faced family illness. If this webinar were only 1 minute long, my message would be establish and maintain open lines of communication about the illness. Good communication is your children's best defense against inaccurate or frightening stories about what's going on with mom. Good communication is the only way for you to recognize and respond to your children's needs in healthy ways. As long as that communication stays open both ways, your children will feel your strength feeding theirs. I have one caveat. Open communication enables you to meet your children's needs if and only if you are honest. In my introduction, I shared my belief that there's no single right way to raise children. When it comes to communication, this is one area of parenting where I believe there is a right way and a wrong way. Lies, half lies, lies by omission are not okay. And here's why. There is only one way to establish and maintain bonds of trust: by always, always telling the truth. Your sons and daughters need to be able to believe you in order to grow up into adults who, in turn, can trust others. With the added stress and unexpected changes associated with serious illness, your unfailing honesty gives your children a life raft of assurance in a sea of uncertainty. If you keep your illness a secret or sugarcoat what's happening, you're sending your children a message that they can't handle the situation. Now, whether you believe it or not, you are saying, sweetheart, I don't think you can handle the truth. My greatest concern for children kept in the dark is their risk of growing up handicapped by the difficulty trusting important, trustworthy people in their lives, a trait that may impede happiness when they're adults. And look now at the message you send them by including them. I respect you. I believe you can handle the truth. What better way to build a child's self-esteem? I realize telling the truth can be complicated and difficult, tapping into how you're seeing your cancer, how you are coping right now. When I finished my initial course of chemotherapy and shared the glorious news of my remission, 4-year-old Jessie asked the $1 million question. Mom, now that your cancer's all gone, can it come back? Her innocent question crashed against my oppressive knowledge of possible future outcomes and my attempts as a patient to allay my own fear of recurrence by convincing myself my cancer would not come back. For both our sakes, I wanted to answer, no, darling, we're done with cancer. However, I knew I needed to deal with reality. I told her the truth, lovingly, and with the focus on hope and reassurance. Yes, Jessie, my cancer could come back. We're hoping it never comes back. But if it does, the doctors can treat it again. We got through treatment before. We can get through it again. After that, my Jessie never showed signs of worrying about my having a recurrence. And as a patient, suddenly my fear of recurrence was less, thanks to my new, healthier perspective on the possibility, combining an acceptance that I may need treatment again with my genuine hope of staying in remission. The truth, couched in love, support, and hope, helps everyone in the family. And P.S., when I did end up having a recurrence only 11 months after Jessie asked that $1 million question, I was so glad that I had been direct with her. It would have been difficult, if not impossible, for Jessie to trust anything I said after my original treatment, had I falsely reassured her my cancer would never come back. The ancient adage, "the truth will set you free," makes more sense after tacking on a clarifying phrase. Even if it hurts when you learn it, even if it hurts when you share it with your children. Once you decide to share the diagnosis, how much should you say? The answer is determined by a host of factors, the two most important of which are how much must each child know in order to deal with his or her world, and how much does each child want to know? Now, children must know the obvious facts, such as you're going to be in the hospital, you're going to have surgery, you're not going to be able to drive, you won't be able to lift them. They also need to be informed about the subtle changes, such as, say, you need a routine blood test. You may think nothing of a Band-Aid, but if they see that Band-Aid peeking out from the cuff of your sleeve, to them it may signal disaster. The key is looking at your news from the child's vantage. How will your news impact the child's world? What will change for them? What might upset them? And this speaks to the overall mission of, in your words and in your actions, of helping your children deal with what's happening in their world in healthy ways. Now, as helpful as it is to keep the mission in mind, it's still challenging figuring out exactly what to say. And what helped me was thinking in terms of my children's 4 fundamental needs. First, children need ongoing satisfaction of their physical, emotional needs. So they need regular meals, clean diapers, someone to say goodnight, someone to comfort them when they skin their knee or have their feelings hurt. And I'm adding in red, you don't have to be the one fulfilling their physical and emotional needs. Your job is only to ensure that some adult is fulfilling them. 2, children need to understand what's going on around them on their level. They need to understand why mommy's bald, why mommy and daddy are crying or yelling. 3, children need reassurance that they will be cared for no matter what happens with mommy, and that it's okay to be concerned about their own needs. And 4, children need hope that helps them. For me as a patient, thinking in terms of these 4 fundamental things helped me respond in the moment, especially those times I was upset or sick or overwhelmed or just exhausted. When breaking the news of a diagnosis, use the words cancer, recurrence, to help make them just ordinary words and not forbidden, scary, or as emotionally charged as they are for us. Now, parents who use euphemisms, my tumor, my lesion, risk the children overhearing the word cancer from somebody else, and sometimes with inappropriately gloomy overtones. And as for using words like owie or my boo-boo, the danger there is the children may become afraid of run-of-the-mill playground bruises. After you share the diagnosis, an important job is ensuring your children understand that cancer is not catchy. And I think it helps to just liken it to other non-contagious medical problems with which children are familiar, such as, grandma's arthritis or their children's broken leg. Another job is ensuring that your children understand that cancer is not their fault. It is normal for kids to feel somewhat responsible for causing your cancer. Maybe they remember something awful they said or did or thought. And teens worry, even if only subconsciously, meaning if you ask them, they'd say, no, I didn't cause your cancer. But subconsciously, they are worried about times that they talked back to you or they muttered, I hate you. The next job is to prepare your children for what's coming. Children crave predictability. Now, the physical changes are a start. And rest assured, your children will see you as mom, even if you're bald, even if you're in a wheelchair, No matter how you are physically different, you will always be their mom. Along with obvious changes, kids notice changes due to what I call the invisible wounds of illness, such as fatigue or pain. Years into my illness, I learned that when I was fatigued or in pain, my face looked angry, even if I wasn't angry at all. So I learned to make sure to tell my kids, I'm not angry. When I was tired, I would say, I'm not angry. I'm just tired. I'll tell you if I'm angry. Right now, I'm just tired, and I know that that makes me look angry. Whenever possible, when you're breaking news, link your news with solutions or with approaches to finding solutions. For example, if you tell them that you won't be able to drive, also tell them the backup plan for getting the kids to school and their after school activities. Some of you may be wondering, how can I prepare my children? I've never done cancer treatment. I've never done recovery before. I don't know what to expect. Or maybe there are some of you who know what to expect, but you have no idea how you're going to deal with it yet. Simply state the fact of uncertainty and emphasize what is certain. Hey kids, I'm not sure what all the changes will be, but whatever happens, you will be taken care of. I promise to keep you informed, and together we'll deal with whatever comes our way. The best answers are truthful answers couched in love, support, and hopefulness. Darling, you asked me a good question. I don't know why I got cancer. We do know how to treat my cancer. Oh, I don't know when my energy will be normal again. But it's okay, we don't know. I love you the same, no matter what my energy level is. We'll have to work at it, but I know we'll find ways to make it work. I'll share with you that one of the gifts of my unwanted illness is how it pushed me to teach my children to live well with unanswered questions, to live well in the face of uncertainty. Some parents tell me after they hear me speak, they say they worry about making things worse. For example, telling the kids they're not to blame. They fear that they're planting the seed, that idea in the head of the kid who wouldn't have blamed himself otherwise. I understand, but in general, too little information can be at least as damaging as too much. Children have an amazing ability to block out something that they're not ready to hear, and in general, to only process information they can handle. So, in general, it's better to err on the side of too much information. And that said, here's a simple rule of thumb. Tell your children enough, not everything. What do they need to know to deal with their world? My kids did not need to know about the hospital bills. They didn't need to know about my decreased libido due to medication. And what does each child want to know? My oldest wanted to know the least amount possible. And my middle asked a million questions. She wanted to see my IV. She wanted to know how everything worked. Whatever you say, try to frame it in a healthy, hopeful way. I remember the day I was leaving home to get a session of chemotherapy, and the woman who was babysitting our children, she shook her head and she said, "Oh, Wendy, you're going for that nasty chemotherapy." And I corrected her. "No, I'm going for the wonderful medicine that's rough to take, but it can get me better." And I said that for myself and my children as much as for her. Another way to help your children deal with upsetting news is by involving them. After I told my children that my hair was going to fall out from the medicine, I focused on how I wanted to get better, and this medicine was the best way. And then I acted excited about buying scarves and wigs and hats. My husband and I had a fun family outing at the mall where we told each kid that he or she got to pick out a colorful head covering for me. Even before I lost my hair, we all dressed up with the various headgear and took photographs. And I found this photograph. I wish I had another one where we were playing Cinderella. We turned music on the radio and like we were pirates and Cinderella, and we just had a lot of fun. And then as they got older, to keep them involved, I had them come with me on my fundraising lymphoma walks. And then while you're involving them, you can empower them with realistic choices. You can ask your children, honey bunny, since I can't drive to practice, do you want to go with Whitney's mom or Aunt Adele? And you'll notice I didn't ask them if it was okay for somebody else to drive. That was a given. I gave them a choice that they could have power over. And a time-honored and fun way to help kids is through play. I remember with my first recurrence, I had to get mini-mantle radiation therapy, and my kids were clearly frightened by that whole idea. So back home, we played radiation therapy. I got a little mask that one kid would wear and lie on the sofa, and the second kid would have the television remote to be the technician. And honestly, I'm not sure who enjoyed it more, whose squeals of excitement were louder, the kid who got to be the patient or the kid who got to be the technician. But it was clear that play therapy helped my 3 children face their fear and anxiety about radiation and see the radiation as a positive force in my recovery. A common emotional issue for parents is feeling terrible about bringing cancer into their children's lives, feeling terrible about when the kids have to miss out on something or the parent can't be there for something. Here's the thing. You are not causing the problems and children's unhappiness. An illness you did not choose and would not choose is causing the problems. Showing compassion, commiserating with your children about their losses, helps them feel heard and cared about. In contrast, pitying them, feeling sorry for them, disempowers them. Pity makes things worse, hindering children from the work of adjusting and moving forward under the circumstances. In my case, to keep me from feeling pity for my children, I consciously kept focusing on using my unwanted illness as a platform for teaching my children the skills and the values and the lessons I would want to teach them if I were never sick a day in my life. When my children were working around my limits, they were learning flexibility. When my children were respecting my needs, they were learning tolerance. When my children tended to my needs, be it by bringing me water or making me a get well card, they were learning compassion. When my children saw me as whole, even when I was bald, even when I was limping, they learned self-love. When my children had to fend for themselves, my children made their lunches at much earlier ages than any of their classmates. My children had to do many things by themselves earlier than their classmates. They learned self-sufficiency. And when they dealt with my setbacks, they learned perseverance and resilience. Which brings us to the next point. Shaping children's perception of reality complements, not replaces, dealing with their emotional responses. Even if the news is presented in healthy, hopeful, loving ways, you can expect your children to experience unpleasant emotions. I'll share with you that as a mommy with cancer, more painful for me than the bone marrow biopsies and the profound nausea was witnessing my children's distress. What helped me was reminding myself their outbursts were not the problem. Their outbursts were the signal of a problem or the response to a problem. The night after I was diagnosed with my first recurrence, I headed toward the garage to go to my support group because I really needed to go to support group that night. 7-year-old Becky screamed at me, "You're leaving? You care more about your stupid support group than me." My daughter was scared of my illness, angry it recurred, fearful of abandonment. The following summer, when I was leaving to fly to California to receive investigational treatment, Becky stood in the doorway waving. "Bye, Mom. It's not going to work." Who could blame her? She'd hoped my chemotherapy would cure me. She'd hoped again that the radiation therapy would cure me. Her fear of being disappointed yet again overwhelmed the emotional lift of hoping that the third time would be the charm. My mantra for dealing with her outbursts was, if she feels safe enough to express her ugly emotions or negative thoughts, we're doing okay. It's good that she's letting me know how she feels. When you break any news with your children, mom to mom, I'm telling you, prepare yourself for any emotional reaction, including seeming to not care at all about your news. And steel yourself for the expressions of pain. Try to keep from emphasizing in ways that make it difficult for you to help your children through the normal healing emotions. Children are entitled to have and express normal emotional reactions in a safe place. Now, in my house, usually the safe place was in my or my husband's arms, but there were plenty of times that we were just unable to be there for them, in which case we ensured that someone, a family, grandparent, a family friend, was there for them. It is a great life lesson to teach kids that unpleasant emotions are not the problem. They're the signal of a problem or the response to a problem, and that unpleasant emotions can be used positively in life. And the main way that they help children is if the children then talk with you or talk with a trusted adult about what they're feeling, so that together you can figure out the underlying problem and find ways to work through them and keep moving forward. That's what this is all about. Keeping your children from getting stuck in negative emotions and moving forward. Which takes us to healing hope. My fourth fundamental need of children. Hope is essential to living our best life. When dealing with cancer, hope is central to getting good care and living as fully as possible. For children, hope is essential for adjusting to the changes and continuing to learn and grow in healthy ways. So, let's look at hope. What is hope? Hope is a feeling linked to a belief the desired outcome can happen. Hope is a pleasant feeling that arises in settings of uncertainty, and it's a feeling linked to your belief that what you want to happen can happen for you. Well, how does hope help you? How does it work? In general, hope helps us in one of two ways. It motivates us to action when we can do something to increase the chance of the desired outcome, and it helps us wait when there's no more we can do, or when we've done everything we can do and the outcome is beyond our control. If hope is a feeling linked to a belief, it follows that anything affecting your beliefs about the desired outcome affects your hope. If you believe your diagnosis is a death sentence, it will be difficult to feel hope of long-term survival. If you believe you're damaged goods, it will be difficult to have hope of being attractive or whole again. Clearly, what you believe matters, and problems may arise if you believe something based on inaccurate information. As an extreme example, let's imagine patients who believe a secret powder ordered from a quack website can cure their cancer. If that belief motivates them to use the powder, while mixing it, while drinking it, they will experience hope, false hope, an uplifting experience indistinguishable from realistic hope, one that makes them feel better emotionally and may help them feel better physically too, if it triggers the placebo effect. But this is a belief based on inaccurate information. The danger of false hope is that it feels healing in the short run, but it's not healing if it leads patients to decline effective cancer therapy or to take over-the-counter medicines that counteract effective cancer therapy. And since those patients' hope is based on inaccurate information, in this case, the secret powder can cure cancer, they'll likely be disappointed in the end. I think where people get tripped up is not realizing that false hope is a real feeling, a feeling that can lead you astray. The big surprise for me as a patient was discovering that some realistic hopes were not healing hope. As an example, let's look at the common situation of undergoing scans for a worrisome symptom. If tonight I developed a new lump, between the time my oncologist gave me a requisition for a scan and the time I got the results, what do you think would be the number one thing I would hope for? Of course, good news. Nope. Good news would not be my primary hope. That hope never helped me and only made me feel more vulnerable and impotent. I mean, the scans were going to show what they were going to show, whatever I was hoping, right? If the outcome was what I feared, I felt somewhat responsible, as if I hadn't hoped right. I found a more healing hope for that period of uncertainty while undergoing evaluations. Now, between the time I get a requisition and the time I get the results, I consciously, repeatedly tell myself and tell everyone who will listen, I'm hoping for accurate news, news that can help me most. This hope gives me a sense of purpose that drives me to hold still in the scanner to get clear pictures. It stirs patience because I want my doctors to take their time scrutinizing the findings. And since hope for accurate news gives a nod to the possibility of receiving unwanted news, this hope helps prepare me for any news. Hoping for accurate news lessens the shock if the results are what I feared, and it prevents despair by framing upsetting results as useful news and silencing an inner voice trying to blame me. Now, I still hope for good news, but I consciously push that hope to the background while keeping my hope for accurate news center stage. With all these ideas about hope in mind, how can you guide your children toward healing hope? Hope that helps them live their best life. You can share with them that there is always something healing to hope for, and the best hopes help them take action when they can do something, and if there's no more they can do, helps them wait. You can start by asking your children, what are you hoping for? An open-ended question may lead you to what's on top of their mind, or not, and if not, you can try prompting them with cues. Well, what are you hoping for regarding my recovery? What are you hoping for about how things are going at home? If your children have trouble answering, an approach that may work is asking, if I gave you a magic wand, what would you wish for? In the context of fantasy, their wishes may provide a window into what's going on in their world and what's going on in their mind. And you can use this knowledge then to guide them toward healing hope. Am I encouraging magical thinking, which is normal for kids, especially youngsters? I don't think so. As long as you're clear about wishes being about make-believe and hopes about reality. You know, even my 2-year-old was old enough to have some sense of the difference between wishes and hopes, just as he was old enough to know the difference between jumping and flying. He knew he could jump and not fly. Whatever your children tell you they wish, validate it as understandable and acceptable, and then encourage them to use their wishes, which are fantasy, to help them find realistic healing hope. Hope that helps them through the uncertainty. I'll give you an example. When I had to be hospitalized during my initial course of chemotherapy, my kids wanted me home, sitting on their beds, singing their night-night song as usual. So I validated their wish. I wish I could sing your song the usual way too. And then I stated that it wasn't a choice. I was going to the hospital. I needed to go to the hospital for a good reason, to get the medicine that could get me better. And then we talked about hope. What was the best they could hope for regarding their night-night song? To hear their song as usual, even if I was in the hospital. And that was a hope we could fulfill. My husband would call me from the hospital when they were in bed, and I'd sing their night-night song over the phone. And for the times I was too sick, he played for them a tape we made ahead of time, so their hope could be fulfilled of hearing their night-night song, whatever was happening with Mommy. A tool for helping children think and talk about hope is a hope tree. In this case, this is from the book The Hope Tree, and it's an actual 3D tree, but you can just draw a tree on a piece of paper and cut out of construction paper little leaves and glue them onto the tree. And this way, you let your children talk about their hopes. So let's say your children are concerned about your treatments. You can help them find hope by making a leaf that says smooth treatments and gluing it to the hope tree. And then you can build on that single hope and help them find healing hope by stating the fact that there is hope, a statistical chance of the treatments going smoothly. And for children who feel hopeless, this plants a seed because in general, it's easier for us to change what we think than what we feel. And then share your hope. I'm hoping my treatments go smoothly, reassuring them that you'll do whatever you can to help the hope come true, and that you're confident of getting through even if things are rocky. Things don't have to go perfectly smoothly for me to get well at the end. While making this hope tree, steer your children to make other leaves, other hopes. Jimmy, while I'm getting treated, I'm hoping to work with you on your reading. Janie, while I'm going through treatment, I'm hoping your volleyball team does well. And this reminds kids that they can hold on to many hopes at the same time. It encourages them to focus on shorter-term hopes and to focus on hopes over which they have some control over the desired outcome. All this talk of hope provides a way to keep the children focused on their job, to continue to learn and grow academically and socially. If we're going to talk about hope, we need to spend a second looking at a common obstacle to healing hope. And this is an obstacle for kids and adults alike. The confusion between hope and expectation. Expectation relates to the outcome you expect will happen. Hope is tied to the outcome you want to happen and believe is possible, even if not likely. Expectation is a state of mind that helps you prepare. Hope is a state of heart that helps you live. If the outlook for something is not good, for example, it's likely that you will not be able to attend an event, a special event, because of your treatment schedule. You help your children by explaining they can accept the likelihood of the unwanted outcome and prepare for it. At the same time, they can hope for the best possible outcome. We can expect one thing and hope for another. And each of us has to find out how much hope helps us. So you may have a different level of hope about the unlikely outcome as your child. And your child has a right to feel hopeful, just as you have a right to feel hopeful. Well, we've covered a lot of territory quickly. If I made any of this sound like it was easy for me, I have to reiterate loud and clear, it wasn't. I seriously could have filled this webinar with story after story of all the times I responded poorly or did or said things that made problems worse. And the mantra that helped me through my bad days was, the best I could do was the best I could do. And the best is good enough. All those times I responded poorly, I apologized to my kids. I explained what was going on, and I asked forgiveness. In conclusion, in the face of perceived threat, parents' natural instinct drives us to shield the children. We cannot protect our children from stress, change, loss, and pain in life. What we can do is prevent many of the short and long-term detrimental effects by meeting their needs in an environment of truth, unconditional love, and healing hope. The greatest gift we can give our children is not protection from the world, but the confidence and tools to cope and grow with all that life has to offer. Thank you.
Thank you. So much great advice and helpful anecdotes from your experience. So we have a little bit of time for Q&A. So I wanted to remind people that you can submit questions in the question pane on your screen. You'll see a little section that says questions. Click on that and type in a question. We also had some questions that were submitted in advance. So I'll ask you some of those. So the first question is, what advice can you give to moms with respect to their feelings of guilt?
That guilt about getting sick and having the changes at home.
Right, yeah.
That ties into the compassion versus pity. You should feel guilty if you did something wrong. And the mom did nothing wrong to get cancer, to need treatment. In fact, mom is doing everything right by getting the treatments that are causing the hardships at home, by dealing with the losses due to treatments or due to the cancer. So again, you should only feel guilty if you've done something wrong. Moms have done nothing wrong. Now, you can understand that rationally, but you can still feel guilty. And that has to do with feeling bad about what's happening at home. And I come back to that image of using your unwanted, frightening illness as a platform. You didn't choose it, but this is, the hand you got dealt. And focusing on the idea that you will use this unwanted illness to help your children grow strong. I should tell you stories about how the things I would have chosen not for my kids not to deal with definitely made them stronger. It gave them perspective. And so recognizing rationally that you have no reason to feel guilty and turning it around and seeing the things that are making you feel guilty, the losses, the changes, the hardships, seeing that there is a positive side to that, in that children can grow strong through adversity. And every adversity, though not chosen, is an opportunity to teach your children the skills and values that will help them grow strong.
Excellent. Okay. Another question that was submitted. When speaking to your child about your possible mortality, how can you tell them that yours might come sooner than others?
The truth, couched in love, support, and hopefulness. I do think it's a conversation that should be practiced in your head or with someone ahead of time. In my case, when my oldest was about 8, my prognosis, really long-term prognosis, was not good. And she asked me in a roundabout way, how old is our dog? And what's going to happen when our dog dies? And I asked her, are you worried about me? And she said, yes. And so again, I dealt with the truth couched in love, support, and hopefulness. She asked me, can you die from this? And I said, yes, I can, but I'm not dying now. Everyone dies. We're doing treatment that I hope will get me well. If I die, you will be cared for. You will feel my love forever. I told her that she would be sad at first, but she would adjust, and she would feel my love forever, and she would be happy again. And then I went back to the fact that I am not dying now, Rebecca, and we're doing everything we can to keep me well. Let's focus on where we are now. I promise to tell you if the treatments stop working and things are changing, but I am not dying now. And I have to add that I had that prepared. It didn't take me by surprise when she asked that I had
Yeah.
factors. The other thing is that I did and said all the things I wanted to when the situation arose. You know, I put on my mom hat and I took care of her needs when she asked the question. And then she was okay and she went to sleep. And I went into my bedroom, closed the door, called my girlfriend, and completely broke down because it was so upsetting to me to have that conversation. But again, I think what one of the things about trying to help children is that it crystallized for me what my job was as a mom. And for me, my job was to help my children grow strong, whatever happens. Um, the other thing is that in finding healthy answers for my children, I found better answers for me. And I gave you the example earlier about when my daughter asked me if my cancer could come back. Finding a healthy answer for her gave me as a patient a much healthier answer. But also, when my daughter asked me if I could die from my cancer, I mean, obviously, I'd been worried and thinking about that because that was the likely outcome for me. Um, and I realized that for Wendy, the most important thing was my kids being okay, was my kids growing strong, whatever happened to me. I was going to do everything possible to survive, but knowing that I might not. And again, I'm not being melodramatic when I say this because it's just a fact that in a couple years into my illness, it was more likely that I would not survive to see them graduate elementary school. And I knew that as a scientist, as a doctor, I knew that. And I dealt with that by embracing each day the best I could and preparing my children the best I could. And having, paradoxically, you know, a lot of people talk about, they're afraid to talk about the possibility of dying as if they're sending their body a die signal, as if it's going to help make it come true. I'm testimony to the fact that that's not so. But interestingly, paradoxically, talking about the possibility of my dying with my children freed me to feel more hopeful of being the exceptional patient on the right side of the survival curve because I feel like I'd done what I needed to do to prepare my children.
Excellent. So we have another question from somebody who says she's experiencing a recurrence of breast cancer after 8 healthy years and wondering if you have any advice for speaking to her children about recurrence.
I think all the insights and tips that apply to a new diagnosis apply to a new diagnosis of recurrent cancer. Yes, our immediate response as adults is that the prognosis is worse than a first time and that sort of thing. But in fact, when you're dealing with uncertainty, we really don't know how the person's going to do, whether it's a first diagnosis or whether it's a recurrence, especially with the way oncology treatments are dramatically changing. It's always a matter of, for me, of understanding how is this news going to impact the child? What does the child need to know? What does the child want to know? And then framing what's happening in a truthful yet hopeful way. Just as cancer is an illness, not a death sentence, recurrence is an illness, not a death sentence. Focus on that you're going to get the best care possible. You're going to do everything you can to help the treatments work as well as possible. And we're going to be hopeful about the future, and we're going to embrace each day as fully as possible.
Great. We have one last question. How can I help my children cope with the feelings of being overwhelmed with my diagnosis?
Validate it. Validate that you hear them. They feel overwhelmed. Normalize it. It's very common and normal and understandable that you feel overwhelmed. And now let's find a way to help you no longer feel overwhelmed, to feel some sense of able to handle this and control over it. Find out, I would ask, what about it is most overwhelming? That may give you insight into what's hardest about it. For some, it may be seeing mom look different, either upset or physically different. For others, it may be the changes in the driving schedule or the fact that the laundry is not getting done like it used to be. Ask the kids, what about it feels overwhelming? And again, you can try the wish thing and leading toward hopes. If I could give you a magic wand, what would you want to fix immediately? And then some of those you may find out actually lend themselves to very practical, doable solutions. Others are not in control. If the kid wishes for the cancer to disappear, that's not something you can do, but you focus on that you're doing everything you can to improve that situation. If the kid's wish is that the laundry gets done right, I mean, that is the practical problem. And I bring up the laundry because the night before I started my radiation therapy, my oldest was very irritable. And of course, I assumed it was about my upcoming radiation. So we used the worry cup, which I talk about in Becky and the Worry Cup. I had her put her worries in, and I thought she was going to put her worry, that Penny, the worry was going to be about my radiation. And it turned out that she was really upset that I had shrunk one of her favorite shirts in the laundry because I dried it on hot. And so I was just completely off base, which speaks to this idea of using tools to open communication with your children. Look at the world from their point of view. Listen to them so that they can help you show you the world from their point of view. And that peak will help you know what they need and how to provide it for them. Keep the focus in their world. Keep the focus on their job is to adjust and continue school and continue their friends and continue growing despite the changes, and working together to help them continue to grow strong.
Great. Well, that's it for this presentation. Thank you so much, Dr. Harpham, for this really great informative program. And this recording will be up on the website. And also I wanted to say that if folks do have any questions, they didn't get their questions answered today, or if they just think of questions later on, we have trained survivors on our helpline who have been through this as well, been through, having a cancer diagnosis while raising young children. So also,
and I have some articles on my website that might be useful, and I have a contact page on my website also.
Great. Yes, I see wendyharpham.com. Great. And also, please take a moment to fill out the survey at the end of the webinar. It takes just a minute to download, and you can fill it out, and that really helps us improve our programming. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.